Hello guys, first off, thank you for coming this afternoon now. And again, I like to kind of begin with applauding us all as individuals to meeting in this group setting and sharing our ideas and our notions and our research to kind of start a dialogue with one another. And so with that being said, I thought today I'd cover something that's quite near and dear to me. It's the idea of animal behavior, but specifically intelligence outside the mammalian and avian realm. So today we're going to highlight intelligence in ectotherms, so your amphibians, your reptiles, et cetera, specifically in monitor lizards in both captive and wild settings. So with that said, what I like to kind of do with these keynotes and speeches that I do is, again, it's something that I think we can all share in a common denominator with and have resonance with, is that there's a thought or there's a catalyst that really sparks the research and the thoughts that follow and the preparation to actually make and share your ideas. So aside from the creative writing that I do and the various journals that I write for, and I work with a lot of outdoor recreation branding, and I assimilate my ideas of flora and fauna and conservation and species highlights, and all those endeavors really, another cornerstone of my career and my viewpoints is herpetoculture, and that is the captive assimilation of reptiles and amphibians in, again, captive settings. And I've had that kind of spark since I was very young, as we all have our idiosyncrasies when we're young. And again, I kind of mold with that as my career and whatnot evolved, and I kind of kept that with me. And it was about 2011, 2012, I was attending a conference with a friend, and it was one of these national reptile breeder expos where people from all walks of life and all countries from, states come together and showcase what they've been able to reproduce, whether it be a color mutation or some sort of captive propagation of an otherwise stagnant species that wasn't able to reproduce beforehand. And so again, these are large conferences, and there's this kind of like window shopping, if you will. And again, we were kind of snaking through the aisles, no pun intended, snaking through the aisles. And a booth struck me in particular, and it was a gentleman who had set up and who had dedicated his career endeavors to exploring Australian monitor lizards in captive settings and really the reproduction quirks and whatnot, and how to kind of assimilate that into a captive setting. And so I walked over to his booth, and we had this kind of, the casual kind of greeting moments and whatnot. And as we were talking, and I'm kind of scouring the expo and kind of window shopping as I go along, out of the corner of my eye, there's about a 8-foot by 3-foot wide by about 4-foot tall display enclosure, and inside is a black-throated monitor. And black-throated monitors are endemic to Tanzania, and they are probably around I would say the 4th largest monitor lizard. Obviously, you have your Komodo dragons, your crocodile monitors of Papua New Guinea, your Asian water monitors of Malaysia and insular Indonesia, and then I would say you have your black-throat monitors of Tanzania. And what was peculiar is that aside from the sheer mass of the animal, which is probably 5.5 feet long and probably about 65 pounds, there were dog toys in the enclosure. There were things bought from PetSmart that were made for obviously not a reptile, but an endotherm, a dog, a mammal, a mammalian creature. And again, it was a really just searing mental image that kind of caught my eye. But regardless, I kind of went on and continued our conversation. And when I saw it was dying down, I decided to bring up that little anecdote of really, so why were there exactly these toys in this reptiles enclosure? And again, we have this stigma and this connotation with reptiles that they're, they kind of sit on a rock, they bask in the light to kind of reach a homeostatic, means, and then they just kind of eat, have sex, reproduce, et cetera, and then they just die. And so to see this kind of almost play aspect was really intriguing. And so I asked him, I was like, so is there an actual reason behind this, or is it just some sort of gimmick or some sort of like draw of attention? And his response was, actually, if I remember correctly, her name was Sandy. She actually will kind of play with them, if you will. She will interact with the stimulus when she is out of outward stimuli. And so when she's not exploring his house or or cohabitating with them, he will put these toys in the enclosure, and she will, as he told me, she will play with them, and she will kind of figure out what they are from not a predatory or territorial aspect, from an actual curiosity standpoint. And again, I thought this it took us a bit of face value. I'm like, that sounds endearing and cute and whatnot in all the senses, but I thought it was a bit fictitious. So as I'm leaving and walking away, at the corner of my left ear, I hear this gentle squeak. And I look back, and here was this 5-foot, 65-pound lizard, essentially, with a squeaky plastic ball toy in his mouth, and with like a gentle, very gentle ease, was just kind of massaging it to hear that squeak. Not predatory. It wasn't going to be a satiating meal. It was just completely out of curiosity. And that was, again, the thought that kind of just seared in my mind, and I was like, what is this really, and how can I assimilate research and assimilate a narrative, if you will, to explain this to other people and present it in a format that I think we can all resonate with and engage with. And so that started the Google Scholar searches and looking at data that was both recent and a bit far-fetched in the past, and seeing if it had any relevance or resonance, as I like to call it, in this realm. And there's a great NOVA documentary, which I would recommend if you have any time to watch during this weekend, or this weekday rather. It's called The Lizard Kings. It was published by the PBS, and it goes into exactly the things we're going to be talking about today, about intelligence outside the mammalian and avian fauna. And so with that being said, we're going to start with Behind the Glass again. This is just the writer in me, to kind of start with a creative idea of examples of intelligence in a captive setting, what we've seen, what we could put a number to, what we could put an observation with. So this is from this for parenthetical accuracy. This is from Rapid Solving Problem Apparatus by Juvenile Black-Throated Monitors, and it was published by Animal Cognition in 2011. And this example, you all are literate, so I'm not going to bother reading it for you, though. But this is, again, showing how these animals were presented with a tubular structure, and in the tube was a food item, was a stimulus and a satiating meal that they wanted to obtain. But again, the hard plastic around it, they could not break through through physical means. So again, they had to look at it from an introspective standpoint and really engage how to problem solve and how to figure out how to attain the meal, and do so in a I would say creative, but we're going to go with cognitive format. Much like an octopus, like a Pacific octopus, if presented with a blue crab in a jar, will actually unscrew the jar, reach in, grab the octopus, et cetera, et cetera. Again, knowing the processes that it needs to do to get the meal. And so again, they were presented with this tube, and at the ends of the tube were hinges, and all of the monitors were able to figure out within the first time trial, within about 10 minutes, that in order to receive the food, they had to approach the ends of each tube, insert their head, and reach out the food, realizing again that they could not break through the physical barrier that was presented for them, but rather had to problem solve and adapt their adaptations to figure out how to get the meal at hand. So again, it's a good anecdote that really sticks out with me. It just kind of put that idea of intelligence in a very resonating mammalian parallel. From there, we're also going to go to the second notion, actually, we'll go to the first notion. This is Kraken, and Kraken is the senior Komodo dragon of the Smithsonian Zoo. And Kraken is probably, I would say, the most studied and most observed of any large monitor lizard in captivity. And Kraken is peculiar in the sense that we know so much about her, she becomes almost an empathetic mammal. She plays with blankets. She plays with toys. She understands certain zookeeper cues and characteristics. She's able to actually understand empathy in the sense that she'll come over not to seek out food, but to seek out attention, to seek out a means of, I would say, coddling, almost like of reassurance and security. And so Kraken would greet keeper. I always forget her favorite keeper's name, though, but she will approach her favorite keeper, and when that keeper is not around for a few days, she will become distressed and show signs of almost longing. Again, not something we really assimilate with reptiles, or really ectotherms of that matter, which is, again, much more of a mammalian avian fauna thing. We just kind of think that, the greater apes and the porpoises really are the kind of the stigma and the stamp of that intelligence. But to see that being shown in a reptile is something that's not only rare or not talked about, but something that I found would be a great sense of just to kind of bring light on from a biodiversity standpoint, to realize that this intelligence has its place in our greater landscape, and to really kind of assimilate that into our own dialogues. And so, again, from that anecdote, we're going to go to, again, another great crucial thing which I think about to understanding intelligence is parallels and the idea of discrimination and actually the role reversal. So here we have roughneck monitors, the very last quote, and this is going to be from, again for accuracy, visual discrimination and reversal learning in roughneck monitors, and this was published in, I believe, 2007, and this is an excerpt from the paper that was published. And this goes to show, I'll kind of set up the situation for you. So the monitors at hand were given paddles, so a black paddle and a white paddle. Black paddle was associated with food, a positive stimulus. The white paddle was associated with the absence of food, therefore the absence of a positive stimulus. Now, all of the monitors in the study were able to make that mental bridge and associate the black paddle with food, and so quite quickly we're ignoring the white paddle, because obviously there's no point in adopting a habit that has no fruition. And again, that's beautiful in its own sense, but what's even more interesting and more, I believe, worth the nod to me is that when that was reversed, when the white paddle became synonymous with food and the black paddle became synonymous with the absence of it, they were able to make that cognitive bridge between the idea that what was once a positive stimulus is now not, and vice versa. So again, that's a great mammalian parallel to show the adaptation of intelligence and how to problem solve when a former notion is no longer in relevance. So from there, again, the creative in me, we're going to go from the marshland mischief. So this is going to be wild examples of intelligence in the monitor lizard realm, and again, to showcase it and from a very encompassing standpoint, so we can see both the hard observations, the things we could put data and numbers to, but now we're going to talk more of a wild setting to how that intelligence really plays its part in their survival in their endemic habitats. So again, this one, every time I see this in an article or a journal or just in an observation, it's peculiar because it's almost, not to sound too much of a cliche, but it sounds like almost like a Jurassic Park, Steven Spielberg like excerpt. And this is Malayan water monitors have actually been known to work in packs and groups, and one or two animals will distract a female saltwater crocodile, or any crocodile for that matter, from her nesting brood. Obviously, crocodilians are very not maternal of their nesting brood and will lay feverishly with their brood and protect them with an insatiable ease and almost with injury to themselves. And they'll do this even up to a few months after the young hatch. And what's been noted and published in a few times is that a few monitors will go and distract the mother from her nesting brood, while the other ones in line will actually then go and raid the nest, meet in a mutual area, and then share in the actual satiating and the eating of that brood. And it's been observed a few times, and it's the perfect example to explain how this idea of intelligence can then be extrapolated into a group setting, into teamwork, into the idea of coming to a goal through collaboration, which again I like to think is also a parallel to like what we do. We try to work in groups and we try to work as individuals to share our own ideas and our own thoughts, and then come to a meeting point where we can then echo them and hopefully find resonance and create our own dialogues with ourselves. Again, so now we're going to go for the Mertens monitor. Again, this is another idea of intelligence, which is what I think of as a cornerstone, is an animal's ability to be aware of its own body and how to perceive its own body in the sense that it can use it as a tool. So here we have Mertens monitors, and Mertens monitors are got another semi-aquatic monitor lizard, and have been shown to actually use their entire body to corral aquafauna, specifically more like high water column residing fish, and from areas of quite diluted concentrations, so areas where the water column may be a bit deeper, where the accuracy of the kill may not be as great, will actually use their entire bodies and actually corral the fish into a shallower water setting, so a shallower water column. So what it essentially becomes is that proverbial shooting a fish, in a barrel, if you will. So the picking pool becomes much more concentrated, and the animals are able to, again, increase their accuracy by corralling the fish and using that that high concentration to, again, increase the odds of them having a satiating meal. So again, that's another great anecdote to really go into the realm of how intelligence is also an idea of self-awareness and how animals and fauna, for that matter, use their body as an actual means to, survival means rather, to find a meal at the end. And I believe that would be it for that one. For some reason, the other slide made it on. And then what I also like to do with these events, or not these events rather, but these speeches, is I like to kind of echo what I like to call the empathetic thread. And this is from the Lizard Kings. This is from the Lizard Kings. It was a paper published in UT in 2011, and it goes into how we, and it goes into, again, that idea of intelligence stuff. But this one excerpt from it really struck me, and it's, if anything, it's kind of the thing I would like, that I think threads what we've been talking about throughout the course of this speech. And it's, none of the complex behaviors we are describing occurs in any other reptiles, and certainly no other reptiles other than monitor lizards have such a repertoire of mammal-like attributes. And that, I think, perfectly synonymizes what we've been talking about, of how the parallels between mammals and reptiles aren't exact. There's not a dichotomy, but there's more so they kind of walk in harmony. And with, again, I would like to kind of close with this blurb, this kind of quote that I made up with last night. I think it perfectly sums up what I would like for all of us to kind of come away with today after learning and kind of absorbing these anecdotes into our own dialogues. And that is, intelligence is oftentimes the metric by which we measure an animal's evolutionary stature, their mastery about time and relevance. But in the realms of heavily weighted predispositions, we must view such cognitive feats through a wider window pane, one that frames the entire tree of life, not just the well-grown branches. And again, I'm going to leave you with that, guys, and thank you for listening.
Any questions at all?
Oh, sorry.
Anybody?
What question? Yes.
Yeah. Did you starve those lizards before you kept them in enclosure?
Yes, so I started, I kept a few tree monitors when I was younger, green tree monitors as well. But again, arboreal monitors weren't as prolifically studied because they're much more high-strung and much more, they go for seclusion. So roughneck monitors and the more terrestrial monitors are easier to study. And so, and from an observable standpoint. And so again, I started with these notions really as the forefront, and then I kind of would see if they were echoed with my own accounts of what I was seeing in both the field what friends were talking about and what we were kind of talking in dialogue. So I hope that answers your question.
What is the food that you have kept in food tubes?
Oh, they're using chicken meats. So again, raw chicken meats, things that have a very strong smell to it that they can use their olfactory senses and really have a cue for it. So again, it's not like a peanut. So, all right. Yes?
Yeah, thank you for your talk. I like it very much.
Oh, thank you.
So your conclusion, I read in this context of biodiversity, is that we have to look for intelligence, biodiversity, or intelligent diversity, or something like that.
Yeah.
So you mean that not only mammals, not only humans have intelligence, intelligence
exactly.
brackets, but also some kind of reptiles.
Exactly. So again, I think you touched on it perfectly. That's exactly what I'm going for. Is that there's a lot of stigmas, especially with the reptilian brain, and how we just think they're very unevolved creatures. And I think we have to look at things from a broader perspective. Like I said, I speak in metaphors. So we just need to look at the wider picture, the window frame, and realize that there's intelligence outside what we see, in greater apes, monkeys, porpoises, parrots, whether they be African greys or macaws or whatever. So again, like you said, just looking from intelligence from a broad perspective and realizing what that plays in to an animal's ecosystem, ecology, microhabitats, niches, etc., and then how that relates to the greater biodiversity of that ecosystem. So again, thank you. That's exactly what I was going for.
Any other? One more?
Okay.
Just a last sort of comment or question, but is the baseline for measuring intelligence human intelligence? Because I wouldn't do that if I were
No,
you.
exactly.
Okay.
So yeah, so again, same wavelength. I don't think, there has to be a divide. I would say it's intelligence for me, and the idea of what the metric uses is survival. and an animal's idea to perceive its outward stimulus and how to kind of mull that thought over and then extrapolate success from that. So again, I'm with you in the sense that I don't think we should put the human metric in it because I don't think it works. So,
I agree.
Yeah.
I was basically saying I wouldn't judge humans as being the most intelligent.
Exactly. If we look at chimpanzees have a better accuracy and short memory than we do. So in that case, they're superior than us.